Walmart. For most people, it's just another store, bright lights, long aisles, late-night shoppers hunting for snacks, deals, or simply a place to wander when the rest of the world feels asleep. It's familiar, safe, ordinary. But ordinary places often hide the darkest stories. And Walmart, with its sprawling parking lots and 24-hour operations, has quietly become the setting for tragedies, crimes, and terrifying mysteries that most people never hear about. Tonight, I want you to listen closely. Because these aren't campfire tales or urban legends. These are real. Incidents so disturbing that even years later, they leave behind a chill in the air. We'll be diving into 3 true horror stories connected to Walmart, each one more unsettling than the last. Stories that remind us, danger doesn't always lurk in abandoned houses or dark forests. Sometimes it's waiting in the glow of a store sign, right where you feel most at ease. So if you're listening alone, maybe turn on a light. And if you ever find yourself in a Walmart parking lot after midnight, don't forget to look over your shoulder. Because not everyone who enters comes out the same. Story 1. The Parking Lot Silence. It started with a smell. Not the faint odor of gasoline that sometimes hangs around a busy parking lot, or the food wrappers left behind in an overflowing trash can. This was different, stronger, heavier. Something that lingered, clinging to the air like a warning no one wanted to acknowledge. For weeks, in the Pomona, California Walmart, there was a vehicle that nobody seemed to notice. A faded sedan, tucked away in a far corner of the lot, where the glow of security lights didn't quite reach. At first, it blended in with the dozens of other cars that came and went daily. People walked by, carts rattling across the pavement, never giving it a second glance. But as days turned into weeks, employees began to whisper. The car hadn't moved. The windows were fogged over. And then came the smell. Something foul, seeping out each time the wind shifted like spoiled meat left too long in the sun. At first, everyone dismissed it. Maybe garbage was left inside. Maybe an animal had crawled under the hood, but no one checked. No one wanted to. Until one afternoon, when a woman passing by the car finally stopped. She wrinkled her nose, leaning closer, curiosity getting the better of her. The stench was unmistakable now, sour and rotting. She tried to peer through the glass, but the condensation inside made it impossible to see clearly. Her gut told her something wasn't right. And when she finally pulled on the door handle, she realized it was unlocked. The moment the door creaked open, the smell hit her full force. She staggered back, gagging, hand clamped over her mouth. But not before she saw it, the outline of a body slumped inside. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The sounds of the parking lot, the cartwheels, the car doors, the chatter of shoppers, faded into nothing. All she could hear was her own pulse hammering in her ears. A call was made. Police swarmed the lot. And as the details emerged, the horror only deepened. The body had been there for days, maybe even weeks. Decomposed so badly that identification was difficult at first. All this time, hidden in plain sight, as life carried on just feet away. Imagine that. Every time you walked by that car, carrying your groceries, laughing with friends, scrolling through your phone, there was someone inside. Someone who would never leave. The discovery rattled the community. A body left to decompose in the middle of a Walmart parking lot. The kind of thing you'd expect in a horror movie, not outside a place where families shop for cereal and school supplies. Police worked quickly, cordoning off the area with yellow tape. Shoppers slowed down, craning their necks to see. Some pulled out their phones, snapping photos they'd later regret. Others simply hurried past, clutching their bags a little tighter, desperate to put distance between themselves and the car. The victim, they revealed, was a man. Someone who had once walked the same aisles, lived in the same city, maybe even parked in that very lot dozens of times before. But for weeks nobody noticed him. That detail haunted people most. How could a human being vanish in plain sight? How could hundreds, maybe thousands of people pass by, day after day, and never look closely enough to realize something was terribly wrong? Employees admitted later that they'd noticed the car. One said he saw condensation on the windows every night as he gathered carts. Another remembered how a smell seemed to drift from that corner of the lot, but he brushed it off, telling himself it was just spoiled groceries. Everyone had seen something, but no one had acted. And that silence, the silence of looking away, allowed the horror to linger. This isn't an isolated story. Across the United States, Walmart parking lots have become graveyards of secrets. It happens more often than you'd think. Vehicles left for days until someone finally checks. Bodies discovered slumped behind the wheel, hidden in trunks, or covered with blankets in the back seat. Some are people who chose Walmart as their last stop. Homeless individuals seeking a safe place to sleep, only to never wake up again. Others are victims of crimes, dumped, abandoned, their deaths left unsolved. And perhaps the most chilling part is this: most of the time, nobody notices until the smell gives them away. In Pomona, when investigators finally removed the man's body, they found his belongings scattered inside the car. Receipts, clothing, a faded wallet. Evidence of a life lived and left behind, rotting quietly while the world walked on. One officer later described the scene as unnervingly peaceful, as though the man had been there all along, waiting for someone to finally open the door. But the silence of that parking lot, the silence of people who passed by, was almost louder than the discovery itself. Because it forces a question we'd rather not ask. How many times have we walked past something, someone, in need of help, and chosen not to look too closely? And how many more cars, even now, sit unnoticed in the shadows of parking lots across the country, hiding secrets we'd rather not find? Story 2, Blade Rampage in Traverse City. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening in Traverse City, Michigan. Families drifted in and out of the Walmart on US 31, pushing carts filled with groceries, backpacks, and back-to-school supplies. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed above, a constant reminder of the store's endless energy. Nothing about that night felt unusual. The aisles were alive with chatter kids begging for candy, parents comparing prices, employees restocking shelves with practiced boredom. It was routine, the kind of mundane evening where the most dramatic thing might be a spilled soda or a misplaced cart. But sometimes, the scariest nights begin in total normalcy. Just before 8 p.m., a man entered the store. He looked like any other shopper who'd pulled tight, head lowered, hands tucked in his pockets. At first, no one gave him a second glance. Customers passed him, weaving around with carts, assuming he was just another late-night buyer. But his eyes never drifted toward the shelves. Instead, they locked onto people. Security cameras later revealed the way he moved: fast, deliberate, darting in and out of aisles as though he were searching for something or someone. Then, without warning, he lunged. A scream ripped through the frozen food section as the man drew a knife and drove it into a shopper his side. Panic spread instantly. The shopper collapsed, groceries spilling to the floor, blood seeping across the polished tile. Another scream followed, then another, as the man charged forward, slashing wildly. Shoppers scattered in every direction. Some left carts behind, bolting for the exits. Others crouched behind displays, hearts pounding, praying they wouldn't be next. One woman, clutching her child to her chest, ducked into a clothing rack, trembling as the sound of footsteps grew closer. It all happened so fast, seconds stretched into nightmares. By the time employees realized what was happening, the man had already stabbed multiple victims. The store, once filled with the chatter of late-night shopping, now echoed with cries, gasps, and the frantic calls of people dialing 911 with shaking hands. But the rampage wasn't over. He kept moving, pushing through aisles, slashing at anyone within reach. His weapon flashed in the harsh fluorescent light, each swing drawing fresh screams. People later described the scene as chaos unlike anything they'd ever witnessed. One man said it felt like a horror movie come to life, like being trapped in a nightmare you can wake up from. And in that moment, Traverse City's Walmart was no longer a store. It was a hunting ground. The knife kept flashing. Every swing was wild, desperate, unpredictable. Victims cried out as steel met flesh, collapsing against shelves, knocking over displays, leaving streaks of blood across the aisles. The screams spread from one section to another, a chain reaction of panic. Shoppers shoved carts aside, sprinting for exits. Others froze, crouched low, clutching children, or hiding behind pallets of soda and bottled water. No one knew which direction the attacker would strike next. Some described his movements as mechanical, as if he wasn't even seeing the people, just the act of striking, again and again, like something inside him had snapped beyond repair. In the electronics section, a teenager ducked behind a display of televisions, hands shaking so badly he could barely text his mom to say goodbye. In the toy aisle, a mother whispered to her daughter, "Don't make a sound," while holding her breath as the man's footsteps echoed just feet away. Every second felt like hours. And then courage, not from security guards, not from police, from shoppers. One man, later identified as a retired Marine, grabbed a shopping cart and charged. He slammed it into the attacker with all his strength, the metal frame crashing against the man's legs. For a split second, the blade wavered. Another shopper joined in, hurling a pack of canned goods. Someone else threw a chair from the Subway restaurant near the front of the store. And as the attacker turned, distracted, a local bystander drew his concealed weapon, pointing it directly at the man, shouting for him to drop the knife. The chaos slowed. Shoppers, still trembling and bleeding, crawled toward safety. Some dragged the wounded. Others stood frozen, unable to believe what was happening. For the first time, the attacker hesitated. Breathing heavily, sweat dripping, his knife still clenched in a shaking hand. But the gun never wavered. And then he dropped the blade. Police stormed in within minutes, tackling him to the ground. The silence that followed was deafening. Shoppers wept openly, clinging to strangers who had shielded them. Sirens wailed outside, red and blue lights flashing against the Walmart's glass doors, painting the scene in strobing chaos. 11 people had been stabbed, some critically injured. The floor, once polished and clean, was now smeared with crimson trails. In the aftermath, people spoke of the horror they'd witnessed. One woman said she still hears the sound of his footsteps when she tries to sleep. Another admitted she hasn't stepped foot inside a Walmart since. The victims' faces lingered in the news. Their stories haunted Traverse City long after the headlines faded, and the attacker? He was taken into custody, alive, his motive unclear. Police said it seemed random, no targets, no plan. Just violence erupting in the heart of a store where families shopped every day. Think about that. You could be picking up milk, browsing for a new phone charger, maybe letting your kid grab a toy, and in a single second, everything changes. No warning, no chance to prepare, just chaos. That night in Traverse City, ordinary people were forced to face unimaginable horror. Some ran, some froze, but others stepped forward. And if they hadn't, the outcome could have been far worse. Yet even with the attacker gone, even with the blood mopped up and the aisles restocked, one truth remains. The safety we feel in places like Walmart is an illusion. And sometimes, the nightmare is waiting just one aisle over. Story 3. The oven that kept a secret. For most people, Walmart is a place of quick errands. A place to grab groceries, new clothes, or a late-night snack. But for its employees, it's more than that. It's long hours, fluorescent lights, endless restocking, and a constant stream of customers. For Gershom Kaur, a 19-year-old employee in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Walmart wasn't just a job. It was a step toward independence. She was bright, hardworking, and always smiling loaned by co-workers as the kind of person who could make even the dullest shift a little easier. On the night of her disappearance, everything started normally. The store buzzed with routine activity. Shoppers browsed the aisles, announcements echoed from the PA system, and employees stocked shelves in the background. But sometime during her shift, Gershom vanished. At first, no one noticed. Employees get busy, tasks pile up, people take breaks at different times. But as the night dragged on, her absence became harder to ignore. A manager asked around. Co-workers shrugged. They hadn't seen her in a while. Calls to her phone went unanswered. Maybe she'd stepped outside. Maybe she'd left early. But her car was still in the parking lot. Her jacket was still in the break room. And the hours kept slipping by with no sign of her. Her family grew frantic when she didn't come home. This wasn't like her. She always checked in, always answered texts. Now silence. The search began quietly. Co-workers combed the store. Managers double-checked cameras. But nothing made sense. Gershom had simply disappeared. And then, days later, came the discovery. Deep in the back of the store was the walk-in oven. A place few customers ever saw. It was industrial, large enough for carts, racks, and supplies. Its heavy door closing with a hollow echo that could swallow sound. It was there that someone finally found her, inside, motionless, gone. The shock rippled through everyone who knew her. How had she ended up in there? Why hadn't anyone checked sooner? The oven wasn't just a piece of equipment anymore. It had become a tomb. Her family's grief turned to disbelief. The community mourned, horrified by the idea that a young woman could vanish during a routine shift, and only be found in such a horrific way. And yet, the questions only multiplied. How long had she been there? Was it an accident, or something darker? The truth still lingers in shadow. When word spread about the discovery, Halifax was stunned. How could a young woman vanish during her shift and be found in a place no one thought to check? Police quickly sealed off the area. The oven became a crime scene. Detectives moved in and out of the back room, documenting every inch, every surface, searching for answers that refused to come easily. Co-workers were questioned. Some said they'd seen her restocking earlier that day. Others admitted they hadn't noticed her slip away. But no one could explain how she ended up in the oven or why. Theories spread like wildfire. Some whispered it must have been a tragic accident. Maybe she entered the oven for cleaning or routine work, and the heavy door sealed behind her, trapping her in silence. Others feared something darker, that she hadn't gone in willingly, that someone, somewhere inside the store, knew more than they were saying. But as days turned to weeks, answers didn't come. Only grief. Her family stood outside the Walmart, holding candles, photos, and each other. They demanded justice, closure, something to make sense of the nightmare that had stolen their daughter. But all they had was silence. Even now, questions remain. No one knows for certain what happened in those final moments. What she thought as the air grew heavy and the world closed in. Whether she fought, or whether she simply slipped away into the dark. And the oven, that ordinary piece of equipment, became something else entirely. An unshakable reminder that horror doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits in the places we least expect. For the employees who still work in that store, every time they pass that back room, they remember. And for her family, every unanswered question is a wound that may never heal. Because some secrets, once sealed, refuse to stay hidden forever. Final warning. 3 stories, 3 different nightmares. A car in a parking lot that became a coffin. A sudden explosion of violence in a brightly lit aisle. And a walk-in oven that kept a secret no one wanted to find. All connected by one place, Walmart. It makes you think, doesn't it, about how fragile safety really is. How ordinary places, the ones we trust most, can become the setting for our worst fears. Next time you walk through those sliding glass doors, maybe you'll look around a little differently. Notice the corners, the shadows, the people who don't quite seem to belong. Because horror doesn't just live in the woods, or abandoned houses, or haunted mansions. It lives in the everyday. And sometimes, it's waiting for you under the harsh buzz of fluorescent lights. Stay safe out there. And remember, not every story ends when you leave the store.